Hi, this is Mike Power, President and CEO of Silver Range Resources, and this is an update on our Skylight property. First, a quick word from our lawyers. Skylight's located 40 miles northwest of Tonopah in the Royston Hills of Nye County. The property is situated in the little-known Republic Mining District, a cluster of small epithermal high-grade silver mines active around the turn of the last century. Mining in this area dates from about 1905, when the first mine was found in the region by Lou Serac, about the same time as the discoveries of Tonopah. In 1913, there was a brief rush to the area and the formation of the Republic Mining District. For about a year, there was a small boomtown as well, near the Orizaba mine. This was the biggest producer in the area, producing about $128,000 worth of high-grade silver ore between 1913 and 1918, and operating intermittently into the 1940s. About a mile and a half east of Skylight, the Coal Spring mine was found in the early 1920s. More a collection of small workings with a central mill than a large single deposit. This project shut down, we think, in perhaps the 1980s. In the early 2000s, geologists recognized there might be something interesting just west of Coal Spring, a fully preserved epithermal system. Newmont and Rimfire Minerals had a joint venture to explore a large area along the Walker Lane, and the Skylight area, then called Poncho, popped out as a high priority target. In 2007, towards the end of their joint venture, they drilled 6 holes surrounding the target. Unfortunately, this was the end of the joint venture, and Rimfire was unable to find another partner to take the project on. The project lapsed and was restaked by Silver Range in 2016. Let's have a look at why Newmont and Rimfire were so interested in the Walker Lane. The Walker Lane's an 800-kilometer long by 100-kilometer wide fault zone that extends from Southern California along the Nevada-California border into Northern California, where it ends abruptly against the Cascade Arch. This fault's about 23 million years old. It began down here in Southern California. It's been slowly propagating to the north like a crack in your windshield, and it's not done yet. Displacement across the Walker Lane's about 12 millimeters a year. This is 1/3 to 1/4 of all the displacement between the Pacific Plate and the rest of North America. There's a small component of extension that's moving the Sierra Nevada block and the rest of California away from North America. As a result, the center of the Walker Lane is a zone of subtle subsidence. In detail, the Walker Lane looks like a trough bounded by major northwest trending strike slip faults. The Skylight property is located in the eastern margin of the Walker Lane in an area that's dominated by northwest striking strike slip faults and only subordinate north to north-northeast striking extensional features. The Walker Lane hosts many famous epithermal deposits, including the Comstock Lode, Tonopah, and Goldfield, as well as a number of other prolific producers that are just not quite so well known. They're all associated with tertiary volcanic rocks. And Skylight's located in the middle of all of these. Zooming in, here's Skylight, just south of the silver mines that form the Republic Mining District. This is a pretty good neighborhood to look for epithermal gold and silver. To the southeast, we have Tonopah. Here's the east side district being explored by Columbus Gold. Here's the Red Lick Camp, and just off the map to the right here is Round Mountain. If we zoom in a little further, here's the property outline in red. And find the basement rocks are Triassic Looning Formation carbonates and clastics. These are unconformably overlain by an Oligocene rhyolite ashflow tuff. This is of the same age as that hosts mineralization at Round Mountain. Overlying the tuff is tertiary dacite, and capping some of the local hills is younger basalts and dacite. These are cut by northwest striking dextral strike slip faults and subordinate north to northeast striking extensional faults. These extensional faults host veins, alteration zones, and breccias of epithermal origin. The most significant feature on the property are these silica caps. These drew Newmont and Rimfire to the area in the early 2000s, and it's worth taking a closer look at why they're significant. Silica caps are found at the top of epithermal systems. A typical low sulphidation epithermal system consists of a hydrothermal cell. In the ascending part of the cell, some distance away from a volcanic source, fluids rise along faults or fracture systems towards the surface. Between 300 and 700 meters below surface, the fluids begin to boil, and that's where gold and silver is dropped out. The depleted fluids head to the surface, where they deposit their residual silica. In most areas of Nevada where epithermal deposits are found by prospecting, erosion has reduced the section so that prospectors are able to explore about the level of the black line and find gold and silver ore in place. At Skylight, we find a fully preserved section, including the silica cap. Here's what you see on the property. These silica caps have a strike length of about 800 meters. They're dominantly composed of brecciated silica, but you locally find bedded, flat-lying silica, clearly the top of a fully preserved epithermal system. This is at the very top of the outflow zone. At lower elevations marginal to the system, along some of the gullies, you find clay alteration with some quartz veining, and in some areas, quartz after calcite or quack texture. The clay alteration zones in some of the gullies peripheral to the silica caps have classic epithermal style alteration associated with them, including dickite shown here in red and primary kaolinite shown here in the light blue. And these tend to cluster along some of these linears here. The alteration in the remainder of the district is largely what you'd expect from surface weathering. Given we may be looking at a fully preserved epithermal system here, it's not surprising to see that the surface gold and silver response from rock samples is pretty weak. The highest grade sample we've collected to date is only a half a gram down here on the margins of the original claims. We can gain a little more insight into what might be going on if we look at the response from in some of the drill holes. Newmont and Rimfire drilled 3 holes here on this drill road at the back of the silica caps in the lower ground, and another 3 holes down here, also in lower ground, marginal to the area of the silica caps. Let's have a look at their best hole. We're in the area of that half gram sample here. It's about 33 meters off section looking north. Hole number 4 was sited to test this presumed vertical vein fault that runs along the gully. Unfortunately, they were unable to intersect it at depth because of drilling problems. Nonetheless, on their way down, they ran into about 11 meters at just under a half a gram gold. So clearly, the epithermal system that we're looking at here has some gold in it. The question is, where might there be some high grade? To answer this question and hopefully locate a high grade core to this epithermal system, we ran a 3-dimensional IP survey over the project this spring. We're looking at a plan view of the results here, a top-down view of the chargeability results in the final inversion model. Northwest is to the top. Here are the IP survey lines. You can see outlined here the silica caps. Down in the bottom here are 2 of the Newmont Rimfire drill holes. The drill section we looked at in the previous slide is located right about here. Outlined in red in this figure are regions where the final inverted chargeability is greater than 5 millivolts per volt. In this geologic setting, these likely represent regions of clay alteration. And they appear to collectively define a series of linears. What we think we're looking at here is basically the architecture of this epithermal system. Hydrothermal fluids ascending along faults and vein faults will tend to produce linear zones of clay alteration in the rocks adjacent to them. That's what we think these linears represent. The core of the system appears to be in this area here. Let's have a look and see how these results relate to the resistivity. And here are the electrical resistivity results. Once again, a top-down view with the IP line shown here, the silica caps here, the 2 drill holes here, and outlined in red are the linears identified from the chargeability highs in the previous slide. In blue are regions of high electrical resistivity, and we're looking at just the tops of the model. These are areas where the electrical resistivity is greater than 150 ohm meters. There's some correlation between the regions of high electrical resistivity and the linears that were identified in the chargeability data, but it's not complete. To get an idea of what's going on, let's have a look at a cross-section right through the core of what we believe is the heart of the epithermal system as defined by the chargeability response. Let's start with the chargeability model. In both of these sections, we're looking to the northwest, and I've blanked out portions of the model here which are beyond the depth of investigation of the IP array. In the chargeability model, we see this clear zone of very high chargeability here relative to the surrounding rock, and we believe this is the heart of the epithermal system where the clay alteration may be most intense. I should caution you that the inversion modeling tends to widen and smooth areas of very high chargeability, so you might actually be looking at a thinner, more intensely clay altered region here with perhaps sharp boundaries. If we look at the resistivity model, we see that it doesn't closely correspond with the chargeability. There is one area of correspondence which we find interesting, and that's right here where there seems to be a small increase in electrical resistivity. This is a more resistive zone, and that's coincident with the zone of high chargeability here. If we were to have some veining in the area, perhaps we might have this response here. But on the whole, what we see in the resistivity is basically this southwest dipping zone of relatively high resistivity overlain by a zone of relatively low resistivity here. And our belief is that this actually reflects bedrock geology. What you're looking at here, we believe, are the looning basement rocks. This is carbonates and clastics, metamorphosed slightly. And overlying that are somewhat clay-altered volcanics with lower electrical resistivity. The resistivity results don't appear to allow us to image the architecture of the epithermal system, but the chargeability results really do seem to provide us with some insight into what might be going on here. The acid test is, let's look at this compared to the geochemistry. In the maps that follow here, we're looking at the chargeability response, the network of highs that we defined in the chargeability model here. Here was our profile line. And we'll look at both soil and bedrock response for a variety of elements, starting with gold. In the case of gold, there appears to be some correlation between gold response and at least this feature here, and perhaps tangentially these other features. We don't know what these are all about. In the case of silver, once again, there could be a response associated with this main feature here in the overall architecture of the epithermal system. Mercury, on the other hand, is clearly associated with the silica caps, and that's what you'd expect to find in an epithermal system. Mercury would show up at the very top of the system and not necessarily be directly related to where you might find gold. It's not surprising that wherever you have the preserved silica, that's where you seem to have mercury. And finally, arsenic. This is quite interesting to us. This appears to validate our assumption that the chargeability network might actually be delineating the overall architecture of the epithermal system, as there appears to be some association between arsenic response in soils and rocks and these linears that we located with the IP survey. This shot neatly summarizes the whole story at Skylight. This is a photograph from 2007 with some annotations. You can see Lone Mountain off here in the distance. We're looking to the south. There's the drill rig, drilling the first of 2 holes down in here, the second of which intersected about 11 meters at a half a gram in this area here. These structures feed off of this hill, which is capped by all of this silica, and we're sitting right on top of where all the chargeability linears meet. It's really a shame that drill rig couldn't have been moved up here to drill under this. So, what's next? 3 members of our Nevada Technical Advisory Group are very experienced epithermal gold geologists. They know this target well, in one case having worked on it. We intend to use the geophysical survey results and their expertise to lay out a drill program to conclusively find out what's under the lid at Skylight. So stay tuned.